All right, guys. So this past week, Austin's winless streak continues after a tough 2-0 loss against the LA Galaxy. And now that puts them 10th in the Western Conference after 5 matches played. Javi, what happened this weekend with Austin and what seemed kind of a lackluster performance from them?
Tell you what didn't happen. The players weren't there. They didn't show up. They didn't fight. It just seemed very lifeless, very dull. I feel bad. I don't know if something going on with the team, whether it's like they're starting to feel the fatigue of the system or what, but it just seems like it's like every game. It just seems like they're getting tired and tired. So much more quick, quicker in the game, much more sooner. So they're gonna have to figure out, you know, uh, what's going on with their energy levels. Why it seems like they're so worn out during their training session, and see how they can address that.
Absolutely. And for the game, we saw Wolf pick, his preferred 4-3-3. But there were a few personal changes going into the game. We saw Daniel Pereira start in place of the suspended Alex Ring. We saw Danny Hosen get his spot back with John Gallagher's injury, which, by the way, I haven't seen any news about that. I don't think they've disclosed the extent of his injury. Am I wrong on that, or have you guys seen
Uh,
anything?
yeah, I haven't seen any updates on that yet.
Mm-hmm.
Not sure, but yeah. Then there's also the injury that they had right back in the middle of the game. It's
Yeah,
kind of
Hector Jimenez, who got the nod over Nick Lima to start the game, but I guess we could talk about the first goal since we're kind of speaking about Hector Jimenez, who started over Nick Lima.
yeah.
It seemed like Austin at the beginning did have a few chances, but they kind of missed that composure in the final third. We saw this one play where I forget who it was. I don't know if it was. I think it was Pochettino who had time on the ball in space, but then like absolutely rips a shot out like near outside the box, and it just goes completely off target when he had space and time to maybe get a better angle or pick out a player for a higher quality chance. And then over, pushing up their players, they got overextended and LA Galaxy kept, just ripping that defense apart with like one long ball after another until Greg Vanny's side were able to, break Austin's back line, and then we saw Hector Jimenez in a I don't know how to describe it. I mean, for me it was kind of a silly look. I mean, Oscar and I watching it, it was like a super silly challenge, even though he did get injured after, but he like kind of dead fish to the ball, completely missed, and left the LA Galaxy forward uh, you know, completely open in a one-on-one, and he slotted it past Strove.
Yeah, it was. I think, and I was seeing this a lot.
Stuver, excuse
In the
me.
beginning of the
Sorry.
game, Stuver,
Yeah.
yeah,
You
yes, Stuver.
uncultured man. How dare you?
But yeah, it was something that we were seeing a lot before the goal happened, where
Yeah.
LA Galaxy, their forwards were kind of slotting in between defenders. They weren't. They were kind of getting between those spaces between the fullback and the center backs. Trying to make them decide. Who's gonna guard me, trying to like forcing them to communicate amongst themselves of who's gonna mark him, and which was one thing that they didn't do. They weren't communicating to, or they did either didn't communicate, or they didn't know who was gonna get the guy that was slotting in between the space between them. And a lot of times it was either over the top ball or a through ball, and they were free. And I think it could have been much worse in the beginning. It just feels like this defense, they don't, especially on that right side, where whether it's Jimenez and last game it was Lima. It just seems like, well, especially this game, it just seemed like it was happening on the right side and the left side. They were just sliding in through the channels that like Galaxy players, knowing where their players were trying to run, what space they're going to run into, and they were playing pretty good balls behind the line. And yeah, and then so that one happened. For the first goal, it probably caught the Jimenez out of out of surprise that that ball was played, and then he probably panicked, thinking, "Oh, I need to go for this because if I just let him get it, I don't think." Or maybe he also misjudged it too. But it
Hmm.
just yeah, a lot of their yeah. I mean, and even throughout the game, it seemed like LA Galaxy was just much more comfortable on the ball, much more fluid, much more when they got pressured, they were giving quick passes, they were just passing away. And nothing was long. That was one of the few long balls that was played. Everything just seemed short.
Hmm.
When they played, when they had a clear chance to play a long pass that wasn't difficult to make, they would play it. But they just seemed very comfortable to pass around Austin, and I think that's another thing that's probably what tired Austin out. Even though it says it shows that Austin had more of the possession, it just seemed like the important part, the critical, the important possession, it just seemed, and that possession that led to something, it seemed like LA Galaxy had more of it.
Hmm.
And it just seemed like and it seemed like the passing that LA Galaxy was doing around Austin was just tiring them out. And yeah, I mean, this is a team, this Austin side was a side I didn't have, Alex during. They decided to start Jimenez, I guess, to give Lima to rest his legs. That's what they were saying. That's why they were starting Jimenez over Lima. And then they were without Gallagher, but so it could have been worse. But I mean, still, I would have expected, something more. I would have expected more energy from this Austin side, and it just seemed like they didn't bring it, and it's there. To be honest, they were lucky to only put two past them, but
Yeah.
it was always going to be a tough battle for them against this LA Galaxy side. This Galaxy side's pretty good. I mean, they're very comfortable on the
Adios.
ball. They have they have Chicharito as their striker. Who's now has what 7 goals now
Yeah,
in the league, leading the league.
it's important to point out here that before that goal, I kind of forgot to talk about it, that
Oh
it
yeah,
was another long ball. And it seemed that LA Galaxy did have like well, I mean, both teams obviously went in with the game plan, but it seemed like LA Galaxy's worked better, and Austin failed to adjust to that. So, and another long ball, which again split the defense because Austin was kind of overextended with players going forward. Chicharito was taken down by Romania in the box, but heroic Brad Stuver again denied Chicharito from the penalty spot, which is it's pretty. That's a pretty important block there from like the league's, I guess you could call most informed player right now, maybe one of at
oh
least.
yeah.
And then a few minutes later, same thing. I think it was on the opposite side though. Another long ball just completely split Austin's exposed defense. So it seemed like
Well,
Yeah.
now
they
that
did have a
you
game plan there.
well,
Oscar.
now that you mentioned that, I
Mm-hmm.
do want to call out a very important stat for the game before we get too far. So
Okay.
Austin is has won 2 games, right?
Mm-hmm.
When John Gallagher is on the
Yeah.
field. And they have lost when he is not on the field. So all I'm saying is someone get my boy back in. Please. Please.
Yeah,
Yeah. I
like
mean,
forward, quick. Sorry, Javi. Quickly, just going forward for me. I mean, it was just not there, and Danny Hosen definitely didn't contribute nearly a fraction of what Gallagher would have in that position, in my opinion, in that game.
You mean 700K?
That's insane, but that's so insane.
yeah. I mean, this is something that even Josh Wolf pointed out in the post-match press conference. He also notices that the team just isn't bringing the energy. He's saying, I mean, that like he's noticing that like that energy is just affecting, the runs that they're making, how well they can move in the final third, and affecting, just their overall performance. So if he's noticing it, it's something that obviously, and he even said that they're gonna have to look, they're gonna have to figure out what it is that's kind of, what it is that can help bring their energy back up, or keep them from getting to that point, I guess. But I mean, even to say another thing, when they when we saw the changes happen in the
Mhm.
59th minute where they took out Hosen, Fagundes, and who else? I think it
Redes. They
was
took out. Oh no, I'm sorry. They took out Stroud for Redes.
Stroud. Yeah, when they took out
Mhm.
those three guys, and we saw Kikuta Mane, we
Mhm.
saw Redes come in, and then we saw Berhalter come in. It seemed like when they brought Kikuta Mane in, they put him on the left side, moved Dominguez to more play a central role, play that striker role, and then put Redes on the right.
Yep.
It just seemed like for like a good after those next 10 minutes, they were moving pretty well in the final third. They were actually getting chances
Yeah.
on goal. Seemed much more like it seemed like Dominguez was playing that role much more better. But even then, even Mane was getting some good shots on target. I don't know. That's the thing. At the moment that is it a coincidence that the moment that Hosen comes off, it seems like the play in the final third is a bit better than when it
Yeah.
was beforehand.
To be fair, LA
I mean, yeah, but
they did lower their line of engagement a little. I guess quite
true.
significant in the first half, but that's not to say that those subs definitely made a difference because I think they did impact the game in a positive way for Austin. Like it was clear and day.
Yeah, because
Like it was just super
I
clear.
mean, even in the first half when we were seeing Austin press in there, when they'd get on the counter attack and they'd have a chance, or there was multiple times where I saw Pochettino have the ball, taking it up down the middle, and he has options or he can shoot. It just seemed like his decision. I'm not gonna say his decision. It's it's easy to say his decision making was poor when the outcome doesn't come out, like with the outcome that you want doesn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
But it just seemed like what he decided to do, it just like wasn't the right move. Like
Mm-hmm.
he obviously could have played something better. And yeah, it just seemed like, and that it just seemed like their decision making when those subs were made and their movement was just much more better. They played, um, making runs behind the lines, moving for each other. They were pressing back when they lost the ball. It seemed like they pressed better. But like you said, it might have, it might have been just that period, those 10 minutes of time where Alex Galaxy were kind of just stepping back. Because even then, they started to make changes too. At that time, they kind of were taking. I think they took off. I think they made two subs. Let me see. Yeah, so they had made a sub. 3 minutes later, they put in Cabral, and then also had taken out Stanley. Yeah, they had made three subs in the 71st minute. It just seemed like they were kind of going for like a defensive, like kind of just like holding it, and
Yeah.
then in those times where like Austin was on their side, and then they got caught on the counter again. And it just seemed like, and then that's when Chicharito had scored that second goal, which was a beautiful ball
Yeah,
that had been played by, I think it was from,
it was
was it
Araujo.
Cabral?
I
Oh, it
think
was
it was
Araujo.
Araujo.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it
that
Yes.
whole,
Yeah,
was a very good ball
it was
to
Stroud. It
Chicharito.
was a Stroud-esque ball, you could say.
It was a little, yeah, a little deeper, a little
Yeah.
like deeper from where
we
we
have
played.
a poet in the pod, everyone. I love it.
But yeah, it just seems like whenever these goals happen against Austin, it's always on, it's either a defensive miscue, like whether they're not communicating, or it's from getting caught off the counter, or it could be a
Yeah.
combination of both. But it just seems like they need to work on, on their defense. After they lose possession, you need to figure out, okay, are we going to press, and how long are we going to press, and then who are our guys marking? It just seems like everything's just, chase the ball and let's not worry on who the receiver is going to be. But like I said, it was always going to be a tough match for Austin FC, and they'll have to look forward. They have to look forward to next week and move on and try to put out a better performance.
Yeah,
I
I
find
think
it
oh, yeah, go ahead,
interesting.
Oscar. Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, you're good. Go
Just
ahead.
I was gonna say, I found it interesting that I fully expected that without Ring, they were gonna be a lot worse. Like I'm not saying that the 2-0 loss is a good result,
Yeah.
but I do want to say that I think they held their own, at least the midfield. When you look at the stats, we always like Radio Ring as this player that would like lead the team in passing and like would basically control the whole buildup, right? And I mean, he does that, but when he wasn't there, everyone else stepped up, and the passing completion rate was, I would say, actually better than the game against Sporting Kansas, right? And some of the other games they've had this season. When you look at the XG, their XG was 1.2. Obviously not like crazy good, but for example, it was better than their game against Sporting Kansas. It was better than their game against LAFC. So you start seeing some like slight improvements there, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think the bigger thing, which y'all had talked about, is why do they just play better when Hosen's out than when Hosen's in, right? And I don't think it's fully like, oh, Hosen's just so much like worse of a player than whoever like Mane or Redis, etc. Right?
Mm-hmm.
I think it's more once those players come in, Wolf has a lot more to work with in terms of how the team can like structure up top, right? And how they can go about and play in the game during the build-up. The thing is, like, let's say, Gallagher's injured, right?
Yeah.
And then Rain got the red card. I think the biggest issue Wolf has is having the confidence to make these decisions like earlier on, right? Because against Minnesota, if y'all recall, he did the same thing while they were up 1-0. He took out all the players. He put in Gallagher. He put in Redis.
Yep.
And, we saw a way more dynamic and efficient offense without Hosen, right? But they were already up, and by that time they were just like sitting back and waiting on
just absorbing pressure.
Minnesota to like not like sacrifice too much space, right? They just wanted to hold on to the lead. Against Sporting Kansas, unfortunately they didn't have the chance because Rain got the red card. But okay, and then you fast forward to LA Galaxy.
Even before then, though, they did make some pretty defensive changes, and it was clear in the game that they were kind of just trying to hold on at that point, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, definitely. I'm referring to like the offensive changes, like Redis,
gotcha.
etc.
Mm-hmm.
Against LA Galaxy, he's waiting till they're losing to make the changes again. So, like, my point is, he sees that these changes, I would say, have a positive impact, at least offensively, and what they're able to create. But he's waiting until moments either when he doesn't need them or when they're kind of useless. I would like to see a starting lineup with Redis, with Mane, with etc. Try a different system. It's still early on in the season to where like you can still experiment. Look at Dallas. They're like what you said, like their third formation in 5 matches.
Third change up, even going forward, or like their offensive structure, but just in team in general, third in 5 games.
Exactly. So just because it doesn't work for Dallas, it doesn't mean it's not going to work for Austin because it's 2 different cases.
Yep.
We're seeing he's already tested it in short 30-minute stints, like this new setup, and it works, right?
Mm-hmm.
Dallas, he reverted away from something that worked. So like, I'm not saying to do that. Yep. But clearly what you're doing isn't working. What you do afterwards works, right? I would like to see at least one game where we implement that. The issue is now he kind of shot himself in the foot, right? Because before, I'm not saying they were bad teams, but you had Minnesota who was near the bottom, right? You had Sporting Kansas who at the time was near the bottom of the Western Conference. Now you're going up against LA Galaxy. You're going against Nashville. You're going against Seattle. Yeah. And that's where Wolf is going to have the most pressures. Like, imagine he puts in these 3 players against such a good team. Like, he's going to get a lot of flack for it, right? Absolutely. I think he misses opportunity. I think that's the big opportunity that was missed from Wolf that I think he's going to regret down the season once he wants or once he needs to experiment with his lineup, depending on, like, if he loses any players.
Yeah, absolutely. That's an S tier take by the pod's human Excel sheet. That's such a good take because absolutely it's so much harder to experiment when people are already asking the questions if you're the right man for the job. But not only that, when you also need results, it's much easier, especially in their expansion year earlier on when you can, you have that pressure off. You're just experimenting with the team. It's a new team. You're just trying to figure out how it clicks. But you kind of stayed so flat with the lineup, and it seemed to work, but obviously it could work better because we've seen it at times when he switches things up.
Exactly. I mean, hopefully they're able to bounce back against Nashville. I fully believe they can win. And I think the MLS is a league where there's no clear favorites. Like, you look at, La Liga at certain seasons or the Premier League at certain seasons. You see like Man City play Burnley, for example, right? Mm-hmm. The expectation, although unrealistic, is for Man City to win, right?
Yeah.
I think even though Seattle is clearly like above all else, right? I do think Austin shouldn't go in there like afraid. I hope Wolf doesn't go like super defensive against them, because I think Austin has the talent to just take it away from them if they play their best.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you guys have anything to add quickly before we move on to the preview of next week's game, where they do take on, like Oscar pointed out, Nashville?
Let's get it going.
No, just move forward. Just move forward. Put this game behind you. Learn from it, and try to move on and take the next steps of being a better team.
Well, speaking about moving on, they are extending their big road stint. How many games do they have left on the road? I think they have like
three
more.
They have
including
three
the
left. Mm-hmm. Yes, including the next one. 3: Nashville, Seattle, and then Sporting KC.
Okay, and then they have their home opener.
And then they have the home opener against San Jose.
Yeah, so going up against a Nashville team who currently sit, I believe, 8th in the Eastern Conference.
They sit. I have the standings right here. Yeah. They sit 8th.
Yeah, they sit 8th in the
1 win, 4 draws.
In the Eastern Conference. Funny enough, it is their first Eastern Conference matchup in franchise history, obviously. But yeah, this Nashville team is kind of, I guess the results don't always paint how dangerous a team can be, because they do have the 3rd best XG in the Eastern Conference with 8.3. And I think they also have the 3rd best ranked expected goals allowed. So, they expect a lot of goals in their games, and they also expect to not concede that many goals in the game. Javi, what do you think the key for this next game against Nashville is going to be for Austin?
Well, it's going to be not looking at the press or what they're saying about you. Play your game. Don't look at how now. I mean, it's hard. It's going to be hard not to look at how Nashville's up, but pretend. Try to go in like this team, because this Nashville team is they're very. I don't want to say up and down, but this Nashville team beat New England Revolution. They've given them their only loss this season, a New England Revolution team that's first in the Eastern Conference. But they also tied against Cincinnati, who's given Cincinnati their only points this season, their only draw. All the rest of the Cincinnati's games they've lost. So whereas they should have beaten Cincinnati, they drew them, and then whereas you thought they would have drawn or lost against Revolution, they beat them 2-0. So it's you don't know what you're gonna get from Nashville. So you gotta take it as if this Nashville team is coming out, like they came out against New England Revolution. But it's also weird how I don't know how I expect this Nashville team to set up, because in their last game they set up in a 4-4-2 against Real Salt Lake, who set up in a 4-2-3-1. They didn't hold much of the possession. Salt Lake had more of the possession than them. But in the game against New England, Nashville set up in a 4-2-3-1, and New England has set up in a 4-4-2. So this will kind of be their first game where they're going against a team that's it's going to be set up in a 4-3-3. I think I'm gonna bet that they set up in a 4-4-2, because they hadn't set up in a 4-4-2 in their other previous games, and I'm gonna guess that they do set up in a 4-4-2, and I'm gonna say that this is probably gonna be pretty hard for Austin if they keep showing the struggles that they've had in the final third. Because I think this Nashville team is just gonna let Austin come to them, kind of just stalemate in the final third, and then with Austin pushing up their fullbacks, they'll kind of just play the counter off of them, and then if if Austin has still hasn't addressed their issues in the defense, in the sense of like communication amongst the fullbacks and the center backs, or trying to mark in their marking, it might be a long day for Austin. So they're gonna really have to play. They're gonna really have to fix some of the issues that I've been saying from the past podcast. If they want to, win, they just and I think it all starts with just bringing a different energy. They have to bring better energy to the game. If they bring better energy, they're gonna want to make runs with more emphasis. Be quicker off the ball, be quicker behind the defensive lines, and then in that same energy could be used with marking and defense. Communicating, whether they be communicating or following a run down the line. It's not, if they don't show up lackluster and they show up with like something to prove. Trying to prove to pundits or media that those first two wins weren't a fluke. Then I think this could be a good game for them. But it starts with them bringing in a better energy, better levels of energy, better intensity. And yeah, I think if you start with that, good things will come from it.
Yeah, absolutely.
You bring up.
Oh, go ahead, Oscar. I was gonna throw it to you, anyways.
I was gonna say you bring up a great point there about the intensity, and I think not Houston. I think Austin has a great opportunity here to really win the game, and it starts with the energy you mentioned. So when you look at how like Nashville plays, they're not very efficient passing wise. Like when they're with their short and medium passes, I would say like league average. They're like almost 90%, not bad. So, but when you look at their long passes, which it's still like a decent volume, right? Sub 69%. It's like let me see, 64.6%. If Austin is able to force them to make those long passes, I think they have the game pretty much at least tied. Like I can't get that. That's not going to guarantee them that they're going to score a goal, but I think that's going to like really neutralize Nashville's offensive threat, make them play the long ball, get them out of their comfort zone, and that's going to start with like Fagundes, Pochettino, and Ring, making sure they press pretty heavily in the mid third. See Dominguez drop back like he usually does. Stroud doesn't. He doesn't necessarily too, but maybe like Lima tuck in a little bit and help that out as well. Second, what were you saying?
No, well, no, you finish because I think besides next player go on like a big spiel.
Okay, and then second, it comes down to where they like to press. Nashville, pretty similar to Minnesota, likes to press in the mid third at I think an even higher volume, but like same efficiency rate, right? And what we saw in Minnesota, right? You would see like Ring play kind of like medium passes, kind of like out to the wing, right? He wouldn't try to go too much down the middle, and we're gonna see that again. So I still believe this is a perfect chance to see like what you can experiment with on the wing. Instead of relying on Hosen, like obviously Dominguez is going to start, Stroud is going to start, but I think they have a good chance of maybe putting in Redis or Mane if Wolf thinks they're a better fit for like a very dynamic wing play. Always, I know Sylvia has mentioned this in the past, being more efficient with crosses and not necessarily just kicking it every play, but at least to build up the play, it might have to be through the wings. So what were you going to say, Javi?
Well, I like that you brought up the Minnesota game, because that Minnesota game, in that second half, we kind of saw, when they made those subs, it kind of just seemed like Austin were kind of just holding on at that point, because I think Minnesota, whether it be like they started trying to play the long balls because they were getting pressed high, Austin, and I think Austin are gonna have to prepare for a team, to prepare for Nashville to kind of press them like other teams have. Because even then, when we were previewing the Sporting KC game, I didn't expect Sporting to kind of press them like they did and then win the ball back and kind of hold possession in Austin's final third, because it seemed like every time Austin was trying to build out the back, they were either playing a very sloppy ball and they'd give it back, or they just clear it out so they didn't get out of their box, and then they kind of reset their defense and kind of just hold on. And it just seemed like these long spells of possession that Sporting KC have, and I hope that this game, it doesn't turn into that, because like I said, we don't expect Nashville. I wouldn't expect Nashville to press them, but maybe they're learning from other teams what other teams are doing, and they're thinking, okay, maybe if we press them because they want to play out the back, they can get uncomfortable, and then they're gonna be vulnerable to making mistakes. Playing a wrong pass or playing it sloppy or playing it too short, and then we can win the ball back and we can hold possession in their final third. So I think it also starts with them not being too risky, right? And I think being patient. But like I said, it also has to do with them, coming in to support their players, and figuring out how they can build out of the back better, and not be, cut off when they do get pressed, not feel uncomfortable. Because if they're going to want to play like that and want to beat these teams that press them, they're going to have to learn to play like that. I think it's something I brought up last week when we were previewing the LA Galaxy game. Because I just feel like these teams that we don't expect to be a problem or expect them to play like a pressing style against Austin, they end up doing so. And it ends up favoring them, because then they get the ball back, because Austin will give them the ball back out of the panic and they'll kick the ball to just clear it, or they'll try to play a long ball and they just get it back to the opponent. So I'm hoping that they come up with a different way to address pressing if it does occur.
I think for me the key of the game against Nashville for Austin is gonna be Diego Fagundes. So the game, kind of the way Oscar's talking about their press, kind of gives me like Sporting KC vibes a little bit in that game, because they did press that mid third very well, in my opinion, and they did kind of just push Austin back and force them to play a way they didn't want to out wide. And we did see in that game, the few times they did it, when they did incorporate Diego Fagundes a little deeper in the build-up as a key part of bypassing lines of pressure. He created good passing triangles between the center backs, the fullbacks, and of course himself as the center mid. And it allowed, wingers to invert inside for overloads, of course, like Cecilio Dominguez does. So I think that's going to be very important, not only in the build-up stage, but also that build-up transitioning to like an attack and their attacking structure. I think they really need to incorporate Fagundes in the midfield moving forward, and also getting him the ball in the final third.
My favorite Austin FC player, King.
We love Fagundes.
I have a quick point to make too, just from something that I had noticed in the last game that I think I should point out, and hopefully can be fixed. Something that I was noticing a lot was I was seeing Josh Wolf having to tell Nick Lima a lot to come back and support. Because there would be times where whether it be Pereira or it'd be one of the center backs, and it seemed like Lima was already past the half line, like almost even with Stroud, or already ready to make that run up. And Wolf would be telling him, no, come back here, because like if they need to play it back to this right side, you need to be even with them and be that outlet. Whereas trying to play that risky over the top ball, basically trying to switch it, and then it just gives the opponent the ball back. So I think what needs to be adjusted is having those fullbacks be aware of understanding the pace of the game, understanding, okay, maybe we need to slow it down a bit, maybe I shouldn't push up as fast, timing their runs, figuring out when they need to make that run in behind, because if you do it all the time, then you're just gonna, and teams are just sitting back, then you're not you're not bringing any fear to them, because they're not worried about you, because their line's are already so back. Rather than already being up there, come back to the half line, come back even with your center backs, or just play a little a little higher, be that triangle, be that that angle right there that he can make the outlet, but don't be so far up to where it's gonna have to be an over the top ball or something like that. They're just look. It should has to be a simple on the ground pass, and I think once they figure that out, once they get their fullbacks to kind of move, advance up the field to the pace of the ball, not go past, not move up so quick. I think they can have better build up play. They just need to, because I think that's another thing too that causes them a lot of trouble, when they're trying to build out the back and they're trying to pass and the center backs are trying to look for outlets. And it seems like on the right side, Lima's already pushed so far up, so they can't go that way. So they're looking to pass it to Fagundes, or they pass it to Pereira, who's already even with them right there, or they try to look for Komanich. But yeah, I just think there needs to be more support for those players who are trying to start the build up play from the back. And I think once you do that, you'll have better build up play in the middle third. And then you'll start advancing slowly and slowly, just keep passing it around, having those triangles there, not moving too far up. I think you know this more, this a lot, Silvio, with your team Man City. They kind of just advancing, there's passing it, they're not kind of moving too far up. There's always support for the player who has the ball.
Mm-hmm.
You see what I'm saying? Like there's always multiple options. And it seems like for Austin, some players are just so eager to attack and move up, and then there's not enough support for the player who has the ball who needs to pass it.
Yeah, you need numerical superior. You need numbers. What's the word I'm looking for?
Numerical advantage.
Yeah, numerical advantage. Thank you. And in the build up, if you're left 2v2 against the two strikers pressing, that's not a good situation to be. You always need that extra outlet, and you're completely right with that. We've seen that, especially when they're pressed, that they just don't have enough support and are forced to force the long ball. I mean, maybe it's lack of support, but it could also be the supports just playing positionally incorrect. That could also be the thing.
Yeah.
But either way, they do need proper support, especially when they're pressed.
Yeah, it's just and I think if it's a lot. There's a lot of things that need to be addressed, but I think one of the ways, they can, help their situation, trying to be because we know that they want to be a possession-heavy team. They want to attack a lot. They want to pass the ball around. I think one way they can help themselves, and kind of achieving that and becoming a better team in doing that is, playing, having players be in support of the person who has the ball and was trying to pass it. But yeah. It's going to be
play more like Klopp ball,
Okay. Yeah, I mean that's what it seems like it's been the past couple of games in the second half. It seems like they've been kicking long ball in that.
Yeah, I honestly don't care how teams play as long as you're doing it correctly and it's efficient and you're winning, and that's just not happening with Austin. So
yeah,
I smell cap on that statement. I smell cap on that statement. I'll be just gonna leave it there. Then we're gonna move on before we start some and make this a 2-hour-long podcast.
All right, so they do play Nashville. They do.
I'm screaming. He said I don't care play.
Oh God. Okay, so they do play Nashville next week. What do you guys think the score is going to be for Austin next week?
I'll go first. I'll say, I would say that I'm gonna say it's gonna be a tie. Probably be. I'm saying it's gonna be 1-1.
Okay, Oscar.
I also think it's gonna be a tie. I was gonna say 0-0. Close enough.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm gonna be a little more optimistic here. I think Austin do figure it out. I think maybe Wolf changes something going into the game, and I think they come out with I'm gonna say a 3-1. I'm gonna be a little optimistic. I say a 3-1 against Nashville. I'm gonna just throw it out there. Why not? But yeah.
Depends. Do you want it? If they play like Klopp, of course. If they play like Pep, no. We'll see. Waiting.
Any way you play, you can score goals. Come on, you know this, Oscar. Come on, you're a stats man. You're a stats connoisseur.
Look at Barcelona.
Di Matteo is the greatest coach to come out of his generation.
You know this. You know this.
For all y'all Chelsea fans, Di Matteo for life. Thank you.
What about Andres Villas-Boas?
Oh, hey, you know what? I give him props. Without him, we wouldn't have gone.
Stepping stones.
We went from
he crawled so Di Matteo could walk. Right?
You're spitting right now, exactly.
All right,
1,000%.
I think with that, unless you guys have anything else to add about Austin, but I think we covered a good amount of stuff for them and the upcoming game against Nashville on Saturday.
If y'all need a striker, I'm here. Even though I didn't play striker.
Yeah, I hope they change up the lineup. I hope they experiment with something different, bring a different kind of energy. Give some other players on the bench some other debuts in the starting 11. And I think it'll bring a different energy. And I think if they do that, it'll be a positive result. But if they stick to what they've been doing, and if Wolf is too conservative, he's still a little afraid to change starting 11, then it might be a long day in the office for Austin FC.
Yep, absolutely. All right, so you guys can find us on Twitter. We're always tweeting stuff about soccer, MLS, all that stuff. Oscar, where can they find you on Twitter?
OJ Aguilar 16.
All right, you can find him there in his terrible fantasy team, baseball fantasy team. Javi, where can people find you?
Dame_Hav. So I play him this week.
To be fair, mine's not much better because my first 6 picks are all injury listed. So
I'm so over this dude.
I'd tell you about. So we had to tell you about a trade he sent me after this podcast.
Oh my god, yeah.
Not even a bad trade. It's fair. Look at the numbers. I just need that position, not the one I gave you. The numbers are equal. The trade is even.
So you guys can find me at EsprietoJR. Also, make sure to follow the podcast on Twitter at Final Third Pod and check out our website, finalthirdpod.com. You guys can find all our podcasts there and also some written content, recaps and in-depth previews for matches. Thank you guys for listening, and make sure to subscribe and like and whatever app you're using to get your podcast. I'm pretty sure we're on all of them out there, but thank you guys so much for listening, and make sure to catch us on the next episode. Peace.